The morning had started with anticipation. Tom Cruise was set to appear on The View to promote his latest high-octane blockbuster. But there was a buzz in the air that suggested something else. Perhaps it was the nature of Cruise's unpredictable interviews. Or maybe it was the recent headlines about his controversial stances on mental health and Hollywood's evolving values. As he walked out on stage, the audience erupted into applause. But there was a tension beneath the surface one that only grew as Joy Behar welcomed him with her usual mix of humor and edge. For the first few minutes, the segment went smoothly. Cruise spoke about performing his own stunts, the legacy of his career, and the importance of pushing boundaries. But the air changed when Joy shifted topics, moving away from movies and into Cruise's personal beliefs, something he had famously clashed over in the past. "So, Tom," she said, looking over her glasses, "do you still think antidepressants are a scam?" Her tone was sarcastic, but her eyes were serious. Cruise smiled tightly. The storm had begun. Asterisk, he answered cautiously, noting that his views had evolved, but that he still believed in alternative treatments and personal empowerment over pharmaceutical dependence. "I think there are many paths to healing," he said. "I don't believe in overmedication." Joy didn't let him off that easily. "But don't you think statements like that are dangerous?" she pressed. "Some people take medication because they literally can't function without it." Tom nodded, but he seemed to grow restless. "I'm not here to give medical advice," he said, clearly agitated. "But I also think it's important to question systems that profit from keeping people sick." The crowd shifted, sensing the tension. Sonny Hostin stepped in to mediate, trying to move the conversation forward, but Joy wasn't done. "You're a role model to a lot of people," she said. "Don't you think you have a responsibility to be clearer? Especially after that Matt Lauer interview, where you basically told people not to take their meds?" Asterisk, Tom's jaw tightened. "That interview was almost 20 years ago," he replied, "and I've clarified my position since. But it's funny how the media only remembers the controversy, not the full context." Joy raised an eyebrow. "What context is important?" "Like the context of being part of a religion that's been accused of silencing victims and harassing journalists." The temperature dropped. Everyone on set froze for a beat. Cruise inhaled sharply. "We're really going there?" he asked, his voice flat but his eyes flashing. "You want to talk about religion on a morning talk show?" Joy shrugged, unapologetic. "Well, we talk about everything else here. Why should that be off limits?" It was no longer an interview, it had become an ambush in Cruise's eyes. And he was no longer playing along. Asterisk, he leaned forward, looking directly at Joy. "I've given everything to this industry," he said. "I've risked my life for my films, for the fans, for the experience, and I've never pretended to be anything I'm not." Joy, unfazed, shot back, "But isn't part of being a public figure being accountable for the messages you send? Especially when they could harm people?" Cruise's voice rose just slightly. "Accountability works both ways," he said. "The media has twisted my words for years. You talk about danger? What about the danger of misinformation in journalism? Or selective outrage?" The crowd was silent, the other hosts visibly uneasy. Whoopi Goldberg interjected, trying to bring things back to the film, but Tom had already begun to stand. "I came here to talk about a movie, not to be interrogated like I'm on trial." Asterisk, Joy didn't back down. "It's not an interrogation. A conversation. You're the one turning up the volume." Tom stared at her for a long second. "There's a difference between a conversation and a setup," he said. "And this is the latter." With that, he pulled off his microphone, muttered a clipped thank you, and walked off the stage. The audience gasped. Producers scrambled. The cameras stayed on Joy, whose expression was a mix of smug and stunned. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Whoopi said what everyone was thinking. Well, that escalated. The network cut to commercial, but the internet wouldn't wait. Clips of the moment went viral before the segment was even finished airing. Asterisk, by midday, the hashtags were trending. Hashtag Tom walks off. Hashtag View meltdown. Hashtag Joy V's. Tom. Talk shows and YouTube pundits pounced on the footage. Memes exploded. Some viewers praised Joy for holding Cruz accountable. Others slammed her for being disrespectful. Still others pointed out that this was the exact kind of moment The View thrived. Unmessy, confrontational, unscripted. Cruz's team released a brief statement that he regrets that the conversation was derailed by hostility, and reiterated that he was proud of the film. Joy didn't issue an apology, but the next morning she addressed the incident with a smirk. "Look," she said, "if someone walks off just because you asked a question,
and maybe
they weren't that confident in their answers." Whoopi, however, wasn't as flippant. She admitted that the segment went off the rails, and that while tough questions are important, guests should always be treated with a baseline of respect. "It's a balance," she said, "and sometimes we lose it in the heat of things." Behind the scenes, rumors swirled that Cruz's team had requested a list of approved topics, which the producers had allegedly agreed to, but Joy had gone rogue. Whether or not that was true, the damage was done. The moment was immortalized. Cruz's walkout became another viral chapter in the long, chaotic history of The View, in the weeks that followed. Cruz doubled down on his PR tour, appearing on Fallon and Kimmel shows that kept things light. He avoided controversial subjects entirely, sticking to stunts, stories, and box office numbers. Meanwhile, Joy continued her unapologetic streak, leaning into the backlash with the same sardonic wit that's made her beloved and loathed in equal measure. But beneath all the noise was a deeper cultural question. How much confrontation is too much? When do hard questions stop being journalism and start being spectacle? And what happens when two icons with iron wills collide on live television, each unwilling to bend? Tom Cruise walked off The View not because he couldn't answer tough questions, but because, in his eyes, the conversation wasn't about truth. It was about conflict. And in the court of public opinion, that walk-off became more impactful than any carefully prepared soundbite. For Joy Behar, it was another moment in a career defined by provocation. For Cruz, it was a reminder that even the biggest stars can be knocked off balance, especially when the lights are brightest and the questions cut deep. The world moved on, as it always does, but that clip, that silence before the storm, and the echo after the exit, it stayed. Asterisk.